wherever it is.
As we go live, yes, we are live with Simon McKinney, Raconteur, based in Dunedin. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, Pat. Yeah.
Now,
Dunedin, I like that.
Dunedin.
Yeah, you made it sound like very middle of the road.
I am, first of all, wanting to know what the fuck a raconteur is. I mean, when I hear raconteur, I think speakeasy, 1930s, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
When we put up your, comedian coming on, because to be honest, your own website refers to you as a comedian. You're like, raconteur. And I'm like, okay, cool, whatever the guest wants, that's what we'll do. So explain what that means to me.
Well, I haven't changed my website, and I need to, because I thought I'd be popping in here today, and if anybody wanted to go and see it, I need to check, because it's an out-of-date website. I need to update it. And so I've slowly slid from comedian into somebody that talks and hosts events and MCs and things, and comedy's sort of been a bonus. So raconteur, I said that to you, I was expecting you to laugh back, like it's a raconteur is a kind of a bit of a wanky term for, a guy that tells, spiraling tales. Nice. And so I thought I would become a spiraling storyteller type guy.
It's now official, because even if it's not on your website, it's on all our information. So if nothing else, this can be your first, and it's called an anecdote. Not an anecdote, but there's when you notify something within a other list.
A footnote.
Yeah, something like that. But we can be the first for you to be officially
raconteur. It's such a pretentious term. It's so funny.
It's also quite a good business card, though.
Yeah.
Or you'd have to have under your name as Raconteur, phone number. So you have name, Raconteur, phone number.
That's right. And of course, everybody immediately does what you do and go, what the hell's a Raconteur?
Yeah.
So Billy Connolly had an album called Raconteur, which was pretty good, WRECK. And I was like, I see what you did there. Yeah.
You have, I guess, made a living? Is that the right thing to say? Primarily with comedy for a long time. But as you say, you're sort of but when we first met, and I met you after moving to Dunedin, your lifestyle sounded amazing. It's like, living in Dunedin, which is cheaper than a lot of other parts of the country, but still, performing in a professional capacity like anyone living in some of the bigger cities, and doing stuff all over the South Pacific, and doing stuff on cruise ships and that kind of thing. And I thought COVID comes along and, okay, all of that's finished. None of that is left anymore.
Yeah.
But up until COVID, you I often say to people, what's on your business card, talking about raconteur, as your kind of primary source of income, which is what I kind of normally think about what people's primary job is. What is it? What was it?
I had about 4 on the go at once. Yeah. I am a voiceover artist, so I had that going. Luckily, that's lasted through COVID. Corporate MC. I was a writer, and I was all these different things all at once, because they all went in that same pocket. If you were being funny or silly in any way there, you could get people asking for your services. And
Have you done any of that sort of online MC work? Like I spoke to Radar during the breakdown, and there's been a couple of actual conferences that had to become online conferences that he still MC'd, which I thought was kind of quirky and kind of cool at the same time. Have you had any of those opportunities come before you?
I don't like watching them. That sounds really bad, because they're a good thing and they're great to keep the industry going, and they're really good exercise for what goes on there. But to me, I'm in love. I prefer the kick of a group, of a room. Yeah. And there's a hum. Musicians say it as well too. There's a hum that happens with a crowd, with people present. Everyone on screen, when you do those things, they're watching you become the guy that gave it a go. And there's nothing wrong with that, because you're doing a really good job. You're doing the best you possibly can if you're hosting one of these things. But there's a kind of a sympathy look through the screen for everybody else. They're like, I see what he's doing there.
That would have been so good if you had been here in person.
That's right. Yeah, they can. It's like somebody watching your recording of a concert, and they go, oh, that would have been amazing. You were front row. But it's just, I don't know. I kind of, during lockdown, there were other things to be done and other avenues to pursue. And especially because if this was to be long lasting, then you sort of it's fun to get inventive and to innovate and to find new things that you can do. It's fun. It's good to dream up what might be.
It's a interesting thought about what it would have been like if people had have been there. Like, it would have been fun to be. Have you seen? There's a show on Amazon Prime called LOL with Rebel Wilson.
Oh yeah,
one of the funniest shows I've ever seen in my life. I've watched it twice, the series twice.
Yeah.
It is 10 Australian comedians, and I'll be honest, I didn't really know any of them other than Sam. I forget his surname, but he's been on 8 out of 10 Cats. Does Countdown a few times. He's got like he's bald on top and he's got hair and a big moustache. So, anyway, the name eludes me right now. But the other guys I didn't really know. And it's a competition on one Saturday afternoon over 6 hours, and the competition is you 10 comedians have to be in this room together and no one's allowed to laugh. That's the competition.
Right.
And it is hilarious.
Yeah.
And the thing about the if you had have been there moment was they start doing this thing even within this new little community. They go, yep, that would have been funny. That was, just so you know, that's a really funny comment. And
they
if
acknowledge it.
If it was at any other kind of moment in my life, I'd be laughing hard right now. That's a really funny moment. So it's interesting just actually seeing this other world be brought together and then acknowledge the other world. So yeah, honestly.
But that's good they don't give them flags or anything to hold up, which would mean a laugh. That means they have to verbalise. That would have been extremely funny.
One of the comedians brings along a whistle. And she goes, and she blows the whistle. And they go, what's in that? And the whistle's for the opposite. When someone's unfunny, I'm going to blow the whistle. So.
Right, I see.
So obviously they spend the whole time trying to make each other laugh.
Yeah.
It is, I don't know if you find the same, but there's not a lot that I watch on TV, especially if I'm by myself, that I actually laugh out loud at. I can watch a Dave Chappelle comedy special or whatever and go, this is genius, I'm loving this is so funny, but it still doesn't necessarily bring out that laugh that becomes contagious when you're in a group, when you're in the room. This one I probably laughed out loud 10, 15, 20 times. Honestly, it's just so funny. I would recommend it to anybody. It's called LOL, and Rebel Wilson is the host.
Okay, LOL.
And I actually avoided it to start off with because I'm not a huge fan of Rebel Wilson, and I think it was one of those, I'm a bit bored. What's this? Oh, let's have a look.
Yeah, isn't it?
And it was amazing.
Okay, I'm going to check it out because isn't that funny how something can be, if you've seen somebody somewhere and they've sort of tainted your view on whatever, you need somebody like yourself to say, no, seriously, no matter what you think of them, go back and see that one again.
Because what it is, it's these guys performing, 15-minute avant-garde comedy skits to try and make their mates laugh. And you'll know this. I'm not a stand-up comedian, but I've been around enough of them to know that the funniest a stand-up comedian sort of ever is in the green room out the back making his mates laugh. Because that's where all the rawest and the realest and the most cuttingness comes out. And this program, you've got, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 episodes with these comedians doing that. It's fucking awesome.
That's okay. I'm going to check it out. That sounds awesome.
LOL, it's called.
LOL.
Yeah.
And you're right about that. In the green room, you're sharpening your blades for what's going to happen on stage. You're getting everything ready. And so you vent and you find your level. The green room is like a little, it's like a little check. Recently there's been words about people saying I went to this comedy club and what they said offended me, and because they were and what somebody said recently was very wise. They said a comedy club is a workshop, and what you're doing is you're allowed in, you pay to get in.
There are terms and conditions to your ticket.
But what you're watching is you're watching somebody workshop some stuff, and it's a little bit like in the dark. You find out where the furniture is so you don't bump into it. They sort of say, right, so that's all right, whoops. And half the crowd goes, you stepped over the line, they roar with laughter. But anyone that doesn't, that gets really put out by that, you have to say, no, it's all right. He just found out where that was. And he's pushing it now, he's prodding it, but he knows where it is, So you sort of you're not allowed to say, oi. But in the green room, you can go way over, and then you can go, all right, sort of backtrack a bit, where's the line, and then go out and play with that line there.
It's also why I like listening to comedians doing podcasts together, like mates. Like there's one, Two Beers, One Cave that I listen to, which is Bert Kreischer and Tom Segura.
All right.
They're best mates, and all they do is they never have guests.
Yeah.
Just once a week, they talk for an hour and a half. And because they're mates and they're comedians, they go well over that line on their podcast because it's kind of like a green room. Yes, they do cut some things out. You can hear sometimes they're saying, blip. Yeah, there's a bleep on that one or whatever. But it's a lot rawer and realer. And it made me think about you, actually. I know that you are saying the Raconteur thing at the moment and more maybe work or payment coming from hosting and that sort of thing. But what I follow and listen to a lot of comedians in America, in particular, UK as well, but America seems to be where they've got the podcasting thing nailed down. So there seems to be more content coming from there. And they're all talking about missing getting in front of that crowd and trying to figure out ways to do it during the COVID lockdown. Are you someone who, you live in Dunedin, but obviously you do stuff all over the world. Are you someone who every now and again just has that that need to jump on stage somewhere? Because they do comedy like down at Inch Bar on Thursday nights or whatever. Do you ever just jump up into then because you just want to test run some stuff? You want to try some stuff out?
Yeah, for sure. Laura, my wife, we used to laugh because if I went 2 weeks without a gig, I would get fidgety. I'd be kind of a bit sort of something would be up, and she would say, "You need to gig, don't you?" And I'd say, "How'd you guess?" And she'd be like, because then the puns come out, everything goes a bit dad jokey at home. And Laura's amazing because she's perfect because she doesn't humour me. If I'm shooting stuff off there, she's got you talked about a sort of a what is it, a button, no, buzzer, a whistle that lady had before to say it wasn't
Things
funny.
aren't funny.
Laura has one which is I am funny. And it's a noise she makes if she's busy and can't have time to indulge. So she'll go, "Arr, arr, 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 arr," and then carry on. And that means I acknowledge what you've said. I realise you think it's funny. I applaud your efforts, and then we're going to move on.
Sounds like the Popeye laugh.
Yeah. She'll be busy doing something, and I'll say something. She'll be, "Arr, arr, arr, arr," and then carry on. Like you have been noticed, like a child. So, so over COVID, it was really interesting, and you just had to find other ways. But yes, you talk about around town. The Inch Bar is a wonderful place. It used to be at Zanzibar. In fact, we popped in there a while back. And Laura sort of said, "Do you want to hop up and do something?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, but I mean, these people, you sort of want to." I did, and it was great, and the place was full of people who really loved it. And afterwards, the owners were sort of like, "Hey," and one of them had sort of looked me up online, like, "What the hell?" They got the name and that kind of thing there. So I didn't. It was great. It was a really good night, and the other acts were really good and everything there. So the whole thing bounced along just fine. But you'll catch comedians doing that. They just any chance they can get, they'll hop up and have a wee go.
If you could do me a favour, just behind that screen over there is my phone. I just heard it chirp.
Yes.
If you want to grab it for me, and I'll turn it off. And while you're doing that, sorry, it's very unprofessional of me, but that's how we roll.
Yeah, behind
it was just sitting over there. I heard it go chirp chirp. No. All right, maybe it's not. All right, don't worry about it. That just shows how wrong I have life.
No.
That's right. Chances are it won't go off over here. I never get called. I don't give any calls. I'm interested as well in your take, and you started to talk about people getting offended by comedy. And the way you describe it, I've heard many comedians talk about before, is that what's worse than when people get offended by someone on stage trying something is they're not aware that it might be the first night they've tried it. And a lot of comedians in parts of the world seem to kind of, gig for a year to 2 years. They get their 60 to 70 minutes down pat, and then they put the special out on Netflix or HBO or whatever it is. If it's day one of that year to 18 months of getting it down, it can be pretty wrong. And the thing we always hear about raw comedians is they don't translate well in the written word.
Oh, yeah, no.
Because in the written word, you don't get the inflection.
No, that's right.
Or you don't get the eyebrow raise.
Oh, there's so much. It's like texting or messaging. You can break up a perfectly good relationship with a good friend or whatever simply through messaging, through so much can be conveyed by not just facial but also voice and sound. It's in the delivery. Oh, it goes without saying. I mean, raw nights are wonderful because they are either gold or the most wonderful tragedy happening on stage, like somebody essentially verbally bursting into flame, and so it's either going to be amazing, and you've got these uncut diamonds as well too, like these raw comedians who are doing their thing, and the pros or older comics and veterans and things will often stand around the back and say that is absolute gold, and they don't even know it. They'll say to each other, that person there, if they can hone that and not get it trampled out of them. With people as precious as that, you sort of want them to not watch too much other stuff, and the same with class comedians as well too. A program that we had, and we would go around the schools and perform school-safe stuff to rooms, to assembly halls, and we'd say to the kids, if you're interested, sign your name up, or if you've got a funny friend or whatever, and then they would sign up the thing. And we wouldn't train them how to be funny. Because that's the wonderful thing about stand-up. It's not like acting or anything else. Like at Toi Whakaare and other places there, they like it when you come in and you're sort of a bit of a blank canvas, because then here's what you need to know.
Yep.
With comedy, you can't say, here's how you do it. What we would say to the kids is we would say, you're pretty physical. When you told that, like they all tell a story, or show us what you got. And if so you're moving your arms and things around a lot. You've got really good facial movements and stuff there. I think you would enjoy these people. You give them a bunch of international
Jim
comics.
Carrey.
That's right.
Yeah, physical stuff. Yeah.
Yep. And you give them as close to home as you can get to show them that it can be done. Reece Darby and that kind of thing there. And then you say to others, you're very verbal, you're great. Some of them are so static that it's just their monotone that's funny. So you say, all right, check out these guys, and you reel off a list of names.
Yeah. That's a real Kiwi thing, isn't it? Like I was talking to someone just yesterday, about the Flight of the Conchords, and obviously they play music, but some of their conversations between the songs are the funniest things. Always so deadpan, that straight thing.
Yeah.
The other thing was about style. You must know about the Bill Burr Philadelphia
incident, yeah.
So people who don't know, I mean, I'm not going to play it. Probably it'll get us pulled off and that. But basically what happens, and I've heard the story about why, and if you go look it up, you'll find, look, there's a clip right here. Let me show people what we're looking at. It's on YouTube here. There's actually a clip here that says Bill Burr Philly rant, what actually happened. So you can actually go and find out what happened. But long story short, he spends 13 minutes berating the audience. Everything terrible about Philadelphia that he thinks. And he counts it down. I'll just jump halfway and have a listen.
Fucking losers. Fucking Rocky is your hero. The whole pride of your city is built around a fucking guy who doesn't even exist.
Okay, there's one line. One line from 13 minutes of him doing that over and over and over and over again. I mean, the story behind it doesn't matter, but it's based on...
He's putting his foot on the gas. He's accelerating away because he's realised that he's gone beyond a point now where the crowd are beyond hating him. They actually want him hurt.
Well, that sort of did happen, but apparently the story is the night was terrible.
Yeah.
And it started terribly for all, because there was a whole bunch of comedians on. And there was a couple of guys who were there who got off stage really quickly because they realised how bad it was. And Bill got out there and kind of did that. That got really bad reviews, obviously. But you speak to any comic who was there. I've heard Bob Saget talk about that night. And they were like, it's the best night of stand-up from Bill Burr I've ever seen.
Well, it is. And because it's adversity. If you look at it for comedic value, some people would say he's just berating the crowd and there's no context. So, written down, it's not very funny. But if you look at what he's dealing with, look at the context and things, it's a masterclass, and you have to be smart to do this. Bill Burr is extremely smart and eloquent. He just has that. So many comics do that thing where they have a rough demeanour, but then they'll get eloquent, and people will sort of go, well, Bill knew exactly what he was doing.
So he sounds working class, but he's actually really smart. And
he's kind of got that thing going on, he's chatting away like this and that, and you know what I'm talking.
And you get a free pass into people's psyche with that kind of thing. The guys, and then when you start speaking and like weaving tales and doing stuff like he does, the crowd are kind of, he's like he's a Swiss Army knife, and he wanted to see how angry he could get the crowd, and so it's a masterclass using a situation that might never be captured on camera again, which is full of such hatred. He went for it. He could have bailed, but instead he went. And he also knew the comedic result of counting down the minutes.
Although
4 minutes to go.
Although he did get off stage and say to Bob Saget, "I think I just ruined my career." So in that moment, even though he went for it, he wasn't quite sure.
I heard that too. Yeah,
if he'd done the right thing, and Bob was like, "This is the greatest thing I've ever seen in my life."
Yeah, but that can happen, you see, because he would have been lost in the moment. He would have done it for his own personal enjoyment, and then he would have felt selfish walking off stage, going, "Oh, sort of, holy crap! I just wasted a whole lot of time making."
And who's coming on after me?
Making myself laugh. Who have I wrecked things for? But what you never realise, so many comics never realise this, is when they're on stage, and I get this, you get lost in the moment. The best comedy happens when you get completely lost in the moment. I've delivered a story on stage before, many stories on stage. It used to happen more when I was first starting out, and I would lose myself in the story. And the minute you are lost and you aren't self-aware, the crowd love it because they. And you can't concoct this. You can't act this. You've got to feel it in your bones. Some comedians go on stage and they know, well, I know how to act. I've watched enough comedy. I can copy the movements and stuff. Nope, you're thinking too much about yourself. You're not, because the minute you start doing whatever and flipping out and imagining it in your head and then acting it out, people are watching you and they're going, he's not even in the room with us here now. We're watching a direct feed, a live stream to the middle of his psyche. And then at the end, I've gone, and got to the end, and then you sort of wake up like out of a dream, and with a bit of luck everyone's applauding and cheering and stuff, and then you realize you're done. You come off stage and you sort of go, I've said, I don't know what happened. I've been totally sober and everything's fun. The comedians, if you're lucky, they're going, that was good, dude. And you say, I wish I was there.
It sounds like it's the equivalent of the All Black getting knocked in the head at halftime and not remembering the second half.
Yeah, that's right. You
played it's the non-knocked in the head version of it.
That's right. You ran over the line, you scored 3 tries. Oh, wow. Great. Cool, man. Yeah.
The thing about Bill Burr in that situation, and for people, if you're listening again, just look up Bill Burr, Philadelphia. It'll be the first result. and it's about a 13-minute clip. As he was obviously being offensive on purpose. He knew he was being offensive, offending everything about Philadelphia. What do you think about audiences today who seem, there are some aspects, as you kind of touched on it earlier on, who are offended by everything? And you're getting these conversations starting up now where people are trying to say, you can't make a joke about that because you're not a part of community X or community Y. And it seems that some in the audience are trying to dictate what some on stage can say. And Chappelle's actually a good example of this. I don't know if you probably know about this, but when his latest release, Netflix release, got stuck out to Netflix, there was a bit of controversy about some of his jokes, and they put it on Rotten Tomatoes, and they let the I always get confused, but there's one side that's like the professional reviewers and one side that's the audience.
Right.
The professional reviewers, about 7 of them scored it 0 out of 100, 0. They then opened up to the audience, and after 10,000 people chimed in, it was a 99% special. And he's won, I think, 3 Grammys in a row for his comedy. So the industry is saying you're fucking awesome. The people are saying you're fucking awesome. But there is a small sector of people who write the articles, who perhaps, I think activism is an amazing thing, and I'm not talking it down, but I'll put it this way, are listening to some of the activists saying you shouldn't be doing this. But that wheel seems to be quite squeaky as well.
It's always been there, and it used to manifest itself in different forms. I think what we're seeing now and what you're talking about there is a globalized version of what used to happen on a smaller scale, and that was if you're in a crowd, I always ask for the lights to be down because a crowd laughs more in the dark because they're not aware of other people around them.
I can laugh more freely if this person doesn't see me.
Yeah.
Right.
And when the lights have been up before, for whatever reason, and I've seen pockets of the audience. There are some that don't care, but then there are some that might know somebody over there, and you can see the look on their face. They've got this whole, so I'm not going to laugh until, Sarah laughs over there. If she's not finding it funny, they might have been about to laugh and then they didn't. And so you've a lot of that, and that can spread. Silence can spread like a virus, and it's nothing to do with you.
It's much like laughter can.
That's right. Yeah. It can. If you have a laugher, and if somebody's really roaring with laughter, people can have another look again, and not know why. So what you're looking at is a larger version of people being a little bit too nervous about what other people might think. There are so many reasons that you cannot say these people are right, these people are wrong. There are so many shades of grey in the whole thing that it's circumstantial. Like some people say you can't talk about that. You can talk about anything. It depends on the joke. And many comedians have said this before, because that's the number one question. What's right and what's wrong? Well, it comes down to context, and it comes down to the people and their reasons why. Because people can get really upset on behalf of Joe or whoever.
Well, it often happens, doesn't it?
And then you realise if you went to Joe, he would say, I'm not bothered at all by that.
That often happens. It's often people outside the group defending a group or person, as you say, and the group or person, a lot of them are saying, I don't know. Yeah. And that then leads into this idea.
Sort of, are you fighting for me because I don't know? I can fight for myself. Thank you, though. I appreciate it, but you've just ruined that guy by fighting for me. So if people just laughed at what they find funny and didn't at what they don't, and it's a moment to be selfish when you're an audience member.
I think
you don't have to explain to anyone around you why you laugh.
I think the idea of rules in stand-up comedy to me seem to be problematic. Like one of the rules you hear out is you should never punch down. And on one level I hear that, but then watch fucking Bill Burr. He spends 13 minutes punching down. Yeah. And it's hilarious.
Yeah. Because he's not being mean, because he has declared that he is doing a silly thing. If you can do a silly thing on stage and declare it, then that's what he does. He's not mean. No one's going, that's cruel, because he's declared that he's being.
Although there are a few boos.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah. So there's so many, but there are so many different levels. There are certainly no rules, and the more varied the comedy that comes out of the industry, the better. And the newer types. Some comedians in the past have felt threatened because there have been new types of comedy coming through. There are people who step on the fingers of those climbing the rungs of the ladder because they're afraid that they might be overtaken. And I've been sort of the mind, do it, come on past. I'm just having a blast, and I'm having a really good run. It was, and if somebody wants to rocket past me, great. Well, that's good. That means I'm trying, and that means they've found a way in, and all speed to them. In fact, you help them on the way, because then everybody wins.
Well, it's more than that though, because I've done this in broadcasting, actively sat on people's coattails for a while, but been blunt about it, and then basically kind of gone back, and when they've moved on past me, or when my career's gone past them, then they've sat on my coattails. Yeah. It's just basically the different version. I remember in my 20s I was working full time, and I had a friend who was a student, and then I went back to university. I was working full time and they were a student, and so we went to the movies. We were just mates, and I paid for them to go to the movies. And they're like, "Oh no," and I said, "No, this is how it works. I'm working full time. I can afford to pay for your movie ticket." I went back to university, and then what happened the following year? They took me to the movies.
Yeah,
it was like I sat on their coattails. And if someone surpasses whatever that even means, the career path you're on, and you can jump on them, and it's like this. Whether you're the person with the coattails, or whether you're the person riding the coattails, as long as it's not nefarious, you're both moving forward.
That's exactly it. When I was little, I was in a running race at school, and Mum and Dad were up in the stands watching, and I sprinted ahead of the pack. I've got muscly wee hobbit legs that I've done a lot of lifting with Dad and stuff, and building and things like that. So I found I could take off very fast, and I sped out ahead of the group. But my friend was coming second, so I slowed down so that he and I could cross the line together, because I didn't want to. What's the point in rocketing ahead and being? So I slowed down, and he and I crossed together. And Mum and Dad said there was the weirdest noise from the whole crowd, all the banks of on the grass. People went, "Oh, good, but no, but oh no," and so I've liked that thing where you want to do it as a team. It's like a band rather than a solo singer.
It's collaboration on something.
It's like if we can all go over here and have a look over here, and also the ones that have had a good look say, "Come sneak through here. It's really good. It's fun over this side, and I don't want to enjoy it alone."
I'm interested as well, because that thing we were talking about before to do with what's found offensive, that then leads into this new thing we hear about called cancel culture, and people having to apologise for what they did in the past. The Kevin Hart incident about he made some what are now deemed homophobic jokes, whether they were in the day or not. I actually haven't seen the jokes, so I'm not sure. He apologised for them soon after they happened. 15 years later, he gets the Oscars. They bring them up again. He pulls out of the Oscars. And yet some people also get a pass. Eddie Murphy, his comeback to stand-up is being touted by everyone as the most amazing thing. You look at Delirious, which is one of the most amazing stand-up routines one will ever see.
Really good.
The way he refers to what we now call the LGBT community, pretty harsh in there, and pretty of the era.
Yeah.
And this is the rule I typically have. Don't judge me by the standards of the day today.
Yeah.
You can judge me by the laws of the day today. If person X committed a heinous crime against person Y in 1995, fine. Judge me by that, or judge person X by that in 2020. If person X said something which unfortunately society deemed fairly acceptable in 1995, you can't judge me by that today.
No,
and stop this cancel culture where we are pulling things off Twitter feeds and out of interviews and movies from 40 years ago and saying that means you're a bad person today.
Well, that's what we were talking about. That's an example of what we were talking about before, where people are saying, "Look what I found, let's get him." And that is virtue signaling, or it can be. It's about as much virtue signaling as it's a weird one, because if you say, "Hey, look what I found," you've had to dig. You've got to look at intent. Now, that Eddie Murphy stuff that was difficult to watch at the time, and whenever I saw it, whenever I first saw it, years and decades ago, that was odd then, because you were like, "That's mean." What a shame he's mean. He's funny when he wasn't mean towards a group of people. He can be mean towards celebrities or whatever, but not towards a group. And but that's right. But it's also intent. He didn't mean to destroy, and people could say, "Well, it doesn't matter that you didn't mean to destroy. You don't say that," and that's true now. There's plenty of other stuff to talk about, but dredging up like the Kevin Hart thing. Can he do the job? is he likely to flare up and do things again, or has he really, had a big fright from what he did then? Because I think he would have been great at the Oscars and things. But I'm not one to comment because this has been discussed by comedians the world over. So.
Well, that means you are one to comment. You're a comedian the world over. I don't know what it is. Yes, I do. I'm thinking, and it's coming to my mind, the captain of the Argentinian rugby team just got demoted from his captaincy, I think for something he did when he was 14.
Oh, I heard about that one. Yeah,
and I
something
just,
way back.
but maybe it's because of the world of social media. Now everything's out there. If you could look at, I think, anyone's life when they were 14, you're going to find horrible things said and done, comparing it to the puritanical society we seem to be aiming for in 2020.
Well, yeah, and also, do you want to cultivate a society of people that are afraid to say something? Because context is all important. When you talk away in a public forum, I mean, things are going to get pretty dull if you can't chat freely. Because, hang on, how did that sound? If you're second guessing every sentence, well, what fun is that going to be? That's the spice of why people tune into stuff is he going to put a foot wrong? I mean, it's like somebody said, watching the Indianapolis 500, why do you think all those people go along to watch that? They don't go there to watch a whole bunch of cars turning left. They're waiting for the first crash. So there's a bit of that in every debate, and there needs to be more debates. I feel, I know there's a lot going on, but there need to be, with big issues, people are fighting online when you need spokespeople to be able to have a debate. There should be much more of that, and especially in New Zealand as well too. Not just between presenters and the person, but between two sides. When they used to have more of those debates, that was wonderful because there was so much gold in there. Somebody could put a foot wrong, then you can discuss the issues brought up there. I just spiraled off into a weird direction there, but you know what I mean though. Like if people are afraid to talk freely because of what they could be quoted on later, you're killing off. Just take it in the context in which it was meant.
I have to say, I heard a headline. I haven't read this article myself. I should probably Google it because I don't want to put like the old fake news out there. But I heard someone talking the other day about an article that either Twitter or one of the major social medias is thinking about putting a term limitation on your tweets or whatever the version it is. So after 2 years or something, everything before that gets deleted. And that kind of says to me, are they actually acknowledging and addressing the problems that their platforms are also now causing, that, the standards by 15 years ago, people mentioning things, they don't want to be held responsible for a celebrity X being cancelled based on something they said when they were 14 and actually not a celebrity and not a high profile person at all. I don't know. Like I said,
Twitter protecting themselves. That's odd because they're just the messenger. They're the conveyance.
Well, there's laws in America, and this is what Trump's talking about at the moment, that the social media, law 22, whatever it is that he's been banging on about with his big orange face, that they've actually had to draft a law that the social media giants aren't responsible for the content that is on those places. Because you couldn't be. Could you imagine? No. It's like when there was a word for a while that YouTube was going to hold channel holders accountable for the comments and you can't do that. No. You get someone that's got 50,000 comments on their YouTube channel. Yep. It's not possible.
That's exactly the same thing as we were just talking about before. Like, you cannot stop free speech. You can stop hate speech, but you can't stop.
Can't stop hate speech.
But actually, no, I take that back. You can't. And here's what I was just thinking of before: is if they tried to police that, then you start getting people finding ways around that. And a really good example, decades and decades and decades ago, was because I do stop motion animation with, because I love to do that, and I was looking at all different types of animation, and a friend of mine told me, she said, I think it was a Czechoslovakian cartoon, and it was two little guys, builders, who would go around. They're just simple clay guys there. And there was music playing, and so there was very Czechoslovakian kind of, happy backward R's and N's, and that's probably Russian. I don't know what. But they were building things in their house, and stuff was getting done. And one of the things was they had to do the dishes one time. So they put all the dishes in the bath, and they got a big sort of drill, and they fixed rags on it, and then they did all that, and it smashed all the dishes up. So no, that didn't work. And they would try different things, and it was just but what it was, what I found out later, was in that country, political commentary was forbidden. But the makers of this children's cartoon managed to put in the politics of the day and what had recently happened with the country and the things that they had done wrong in the form of these two guys messing things up all the time. And that way it got snuck through. The censor didn't go, hey, that's political commentary on the movements of the... Because so then adults were tuning in and roaring with laughter at this kids thing. So you see what I mean? It got snuck through.
Yeah.
And art finds a way. That if you start to restrict people, things are going to get mighty sneaky, and then the boundary isn't going to matter. Yeah.
Are you someone who, like if you talk about the style of stand-up that you've done, are you a particular... Because one thing I didn't know about you until we started looking at doing this was, I mean, your website talks about, the impressions that you do, and we've heard a few of them sort of today. And like we've talked about doing some digital stuff together, and knowing that that's in your bag, I now understand a bit more about the ideas we've talked about, which still aren't going to release just yet. But is that something that's like your stand-up routine? Like we talked about Cole Dunnigan the other day, and I love him to bits, and he uses face swap, and go look him up if you haven't seen him. He's hilarious. Does a great Caitlyn Jenner, just the best. yeah. But what about your
the Kardashians
style?
As well, he does.
Yeah, that's very funny. Your style, are you someone who is more observational?
Yeah.
Are you, and do you use the impressions within that?
Yes, that's and most of my stories that I tell on stage, in fact, nearly, I can't think of any that aren't, are true. Have actually happened to me. And I love it because the impressions give me free license to construct a character that you would take a while to explain.
So, there was, when I do a German person, for example, I quite enjoy doing, I don't even know who this is. This is some kind of person that talks like this. But you immediately get an idea of what he might be like, slightly reserved.
Quiet,
man. Meek, probably without humor, but that doesn't make him standard German.
All these, I play on the stereotype. I'm not going with it. I'm sort of making a notion towards it there. I had a German guy come up to me after a gig one time on Hamilton, and I'd done that guy on stage
talking about whatever. And this backpacker walked up and went, I would like to commend you on your German accent. It's very good.
And he was just like I did it.
Right,
and I was like, thanks, cheers. And I was just...
Yes, that's very accurate.
And but so when you do that, like I did the Russian before, is fun to do as well, because immediately you have... And you keep it fun, you keep it lighthearted, and you can... Yeah, it's efficiency of storytelling.
And when I remember when working with theatre sports, when you make an obvious impression of something, and what we often talked about was you never play a gay character camp.
No.
Because you don't make fun of the impression. So the German, there are some unspoken things you're saying there, like the sense of humour and stuff, things that might come with stereotypical, what people think about Germans, but you're not actively saying that, doing that, and so you're not using the impression to make fun of the people, you're using it to help tell the story.
That's it, exactly. And that's it, as long as people realize that. But some people will still say, hey, that's mean, and then it's I don't know, there's only so much you can do. You sort of have to rely on the person next to them to say, it's all right, no, I know what he means, he's fine. Do you
think in comedy that there's this idea that you can't tell some jokes? Like, are there some comedians that should stay away from some areas?
There is nothing that you cannot make a joke about, but there are some jokes you can't tell because they're mean or whatever. But there is certainly nothing that you can't.
So no subject matter.
Yeah, because it's all in. It depends on the joke. There are jokes that haven't been written yet that are really good that deal with really dodgy subject matter. They'll happen in the next year, and they will be gems. And when they happen, that's when comedians cheer other comedians on, and the public are kind of like, oh my God, what did I just hear? And at the moment, people are doing that thing now where they're fact-checking, or they're immediately, there'll be a pause, there'll be a gasp, and they'll be like, can we laugh at that? And then it's like they quickly check, yes, we can, Dave Chappelle's really good at that. He'll walk the line. And he's worked it out.
Totally.
It's like Ricky Gervais said, when he was doing the Oscars, and he was saying I worked out the wording of that joke very carefully with my lawyer. Well, he wasn't kidding, because he alluded to something. The crowd gasped because they thought that it was horrible, and should they laugh? And then they realised, and then those quicker off the mark were able to say, that was nifty. You just coloured inside the lines. And so Dave Chappelle does it wonderfully. All these people have these things worked out well. Yeah.
I heard someone once describe Dave Chappelle, and this is Shapiro then, Dave Chappelle, and the way they described him as a genius, it was a comedian talking, saying that all of us have segues that we get through quickly to go from one story to another or one joke to another. Dave's segues are as good and as funny as the stuff either side of them. So there's no, there's nothing in there that sort of, that was the funny bit, let's now get to the next funny bit. Now we're in the next, it's just all the same. And I one of his stand-up routines on Netflix, he talks about the you know, societal comments he makes. You know, he doesn't make a joke of, and I've said this before, you don't always laugh at what he says, but he brings you along with the story. So he's probably, I don't know, I can't say this because I don't know every comedian, but one of the comedians that I watched that is probably the best storyteller. Now he's telling a story about a black kid in the 1930s or 40s, or no, I think it's 50s, being murdered by the Klan. That's a part of his stand-up routine, and you don't come away from it feeling a sense of hopelessness. You kind of come away from it actually feeling the opposite after a few inappropriate jokes are thrown alongside it, but that's a part of his stand-up routine about a murdered teenage kid in, you know, the southern states of America in the 50s, and he pulls it off. He
does. He realizes the importance of juxtapositioning, and that's what makes the word genius come out of people's mouths when they talk about him. Things that comedians, I'll get back to Dave in a second. I'm just saying that things that comedians do sometimes can appear quite outstanding to the general public, to the non-comedians, like callbacks, for example. If you do a whole set and you do a callback to something earlier, it's one of the easiest things to do if you can get the timing right. But it appears like genius. They go, oh my God, the whole thing came right round and it was a callback. So Dave Chappelle's segueing, like you talk about there, and his beautiful juxtapositioning of something that is heart-wrenching and really important to talk about and really matters a lot, right next to an off-color joke or some bad taste stuff thrown in there because he can, because he's the storyteller, and also it's his story to mess up as he likes. Funny grouped with sad or meaningful has this wonderful effect where one enhances the other. The highs enhance the lows. Jason Cook did that a while back when he was talking about his father dying. When he came to New Zealand years ago, we went on the Comedy Convoy tour, and there's a select bunch of comics that went around, and he talked about his father dying, and at the end of his show people were racing out of the theatre with tears. They'd had a good time, but they would, and he one of the things he said near the end was, so go call your father. And he had done this wonderful up and down thing, and it's quite a nifty thing because it enhances your laugh. Your laugh is louder after the sad. You want to laugh because you're so, like, you know, that moment there, it happens at funerals and stuff when somebody says something and you find people are, oh, they're so grateful to laugh, and you know, it's that kind of thing there. So it enhances both. You've been laughing, now you're sad, now you're up, now you're down, and you end up like feeling like a wrung out dish rag by the end of it, but you've got your money's worth and you felt. And it's the experience as well. Yeah. I mean, the other thing is kind of balls of steel. I mean, I don't want to, I mean, this is the last time I'll talk about Dave Chappelle, I promise. But the thing about that he does as well is he just doesn't give a fuck. Like, he gets on stage and you see it, I don't know if you've seen, I think they put it on Netflix, where he received his Mark Twain Award. And he comes out smoking a cigarette. And he goes, I'm smoking a cigarette. And this is, you know, America's the same, if not worse, than New Zealand with, you know, the rules and regulations around smoking inside, and he just comes out smoking a cigarette and he goes, I'm smoking a cigarette. Did I ask him his permission? Nope. Yeah. I'm just smoking a cigarette. And no one told him to stop. And part of that could be because he's Dave Chappelle and it was his night, but that seems to be another part of the balls to do things and not be afraid about it. Yeah. And that must be, who was I talking to? I was talking to Dave Gibson last night, talking about the bravado you have in your 20s and that those guys had when they started up Elementa P. And, you know, the bravado that seems to be lacking in some of us as we get a bit older that we had when we were younger, he seems to have more of it. And maybe within his group, I don't know, it's, you know, with the age comes wisdom, comes what we would call a certain mana. And now he's like, but the other thing is he's now accepted it, received it, and he's like, yo, bitches, I'll say it. I'll speak the voice. Although he does say in the Mark Twain thing, he congratulates the young people for picking up. I think it happened quite soon after the George Floyd situation. He goes, you guys have picked up the mantle. I'm happy to sit in the back seat. So he plays this interesting dynamic. But that's that wonderful thing about a benevolent... Not dictator. What am I trying to say about but a guy that knows when it's time to hand the reins on to the next group. Dave Chappelle, as far as I know, has never demanded respect, and that's what makes him respected, because those that do don't get it. You got to sort of naturally earn it. But also when he swaggers on with the cigarette and stuff there, when I first saw Dave, I saw a bit of this attitude going on there. And you just take a moment, don't you, where you go, wait a minute, because I need a good 30 seconds or a minute here to find out whether it's an act, whether he's trying to swagger, or whether it's genuine. So I had to watch him for a bit, and the minute there was no posing going on. It was all for real, and that's when I went, right, good, he's genuine. I'm all yours. You bring it on. You say what you got to say. But people that sometimes people try to put on a, and I'm thinking, oh no, don't. Best be you, just yarn, yeah.
I find it fascinating that I don't know, maybe it's just the American culture has a way of doing things, but we don't seem to have the same comedy culture in New Zealand. And it's not that, I don't think it's that we're too small, because some comedians in America, they travel Massachusetts and that's all they do. So traveling New Zealand, getting that hour together, we don't seem to have, the Di Henwood 60 minutes and the Simon McKinney 60 minutes and the Ben Hurley 60 minutes coming out every 2 years. And I wonder why that is. I wonder, is it because comedians in New Zealand can tour on their stuff for 5 years because none of it's sort of televised, or we don't seem to have that culture of, I want to listen to your CD, download, digital thing afterwards, or watch it on a special. It doesn't happen. Do you know any ideas why?
No, I think there's a lot of. I'm always fascinated by the comedians that go overseas and then come back, and they've had the seal of approval simply by being overseas.
Right.
And that's still prevalent in New Zealand, where it's like, well, they're back now and they've been given the thumbs up by the rest of the world, so we'll accept them now. And I feel like saying they were like that before they left. You know that, don't you? We could have caught them on the way out rather than on the way back. And they would have
Flight of the Conchords is a good example.
Well, that's right, and people bring up those, but there's a lot more as well too that go over there. Like, I went over to Britain for 2 years. I lived over there. I took part in 2 Edinburgh festivals, and I did over 300 gigs around England and Scotland, and I had a great time because I chose to do that. That was the way I made my money. If I wasn't funny, I didn't eat. So I got pretty hungry for a while there. But when I came back, there was immediately, and I didn't really, I found it fascinating. They said, right, Simon's done 2 festivals, so that puts him up into this echelon. Right. And I thought, hang on, I was part of it, but I didn't feel good accepting it. I thought, oi, how come? No, there are so many comics in New Zealand right now that have not seen television. I make a perfectly good living going around doing whatever. I do the ships overseas, but just the high-end ones. I've just chosen those. That's my favourite now. The cruise ships are one thing, but the top ones that go interesting places are what I've picked. And the corporate stuff. And if comedians hear that from an audience, they go, why aren't you on TV? Well, that's because sometimes it's good to just do the general coverage of the country. All of the comics that are the funniest in New Zealand, or you will find some of the funniest comics in New Zealand, have gone nowhere near TV. They're just performing, and they're getting huge reception everywhere they go. And because TV seems to be a measure amongst the public, like if you're on TV, you must be good, and if you're not on TV, then you can't be any good.
Sure.
But very often, I mean, if I was a television company wanting to make a comedy show, I wouldn't wait for people to come to me and audition. I would go out and find them. I believe that the people that are making comedy programs in New Zealand should be a little more like Brian Epstein. He had to go down to the cavern to find the Beatles, And if you went to the university comedy competitions and the capping shows that happen around the country, especially down this end, when I was growing up, and before I ever did any stand-up and comedy, that's where all the funniest people were. And they got found because they were funny in their flat. Their friend nudged them on the couch and said, you should go and tell that. And so this was gold panning. The capping show ended up being this marvellous collection of odd bods. And so it's all been done for you. And if I was a television, somebody that made a show, I would go around all those university places because the work's been done. But so there's so much natural flowing comedy out there. And so when people shrug and want to know where the good stuff is, check out your locals and ask around.
I wonder if because we only really seem to have one specialist comedy club in New Zealand, which would be the Classic. I don't know if there's actually, one of Wellington and Christchurch?
Yeah.
Like a dedicated only
No,
comedy club?
The Classic is still the only proper dedicated one. Yeah.
And we had for a while, was it called Live at the Classic? There was like a Thursday, or Pulp Comedy.
Yeah.
Like a Thursday night TV too.
Yeah.
There was a thing to expose, because now really if you want to see a comedian, and I have to apologise, I don't watch broadcast TV really anymore. So you've got 7 Days, which has been around forever and a day, which is great. I love 7 Days. No, not talking it down at all. It's much better to see live though, being in the room. Just to,
cool.
to
You saw it.
Yeah, I've been a couple of times.
Good.
I work with a bunch of those guys through radio and stuff when we're doing that. And there's this other one that's now showing on TV1, old TV2 probably. I don't know what it's called, but it's like Jesse Mulligan, I think now is no longer. He's gone to the other one. So there's a couple of places where comedians go. I think Ursula's now on TVNZ and doesn't do 7 Days. But other than those two, and it's a very different skill set to be able to make a whiz bang about a news event, as opposed to making a 14-minute story about a life event. So as you say, looking at those shows and saying these are the best comedians, you're not necessarily seeing comedic skills to do that. You're seeing what observational kind of whiz bang moments that they can come up with. But really, to actually watch stand-up comedy, the only way you can do it at the moment in New Zealand for New Zealanders is in a club or a bar.
Yeah, or you can find it online. I mean, that's the thing as well too. Somebody posting their things on YouTube.
Right. Yeah, okay.
Then it hasn't been selected for you. See, what I always found a bit odd about TV was I'm watching what somebody else has decided is funny, and sometimes I was like, oh, and sometimes they get it right. I'd think, great, one sort of snuck through. But if you go to somewhere where there are no filters on what you can see and what you are allowed to see, again, that's why open mic nights are so good.
Yeah.
You go, that person might never have made it in front of my eyes, but there's nothing can stop them now because I'm loving this and they're standing right there.
Yeah, it actually inspires me.
YouTube, well, yeah, and you can say anything you like. You'll find your crowd. YouTube is good there that way as well too. But you were saying about pulp comedy. When I was growing up, pulp comedy was still on telly.
Yeah,
and that's how I got in front of the nation. Was I went to Christchurch to audition, and that was my first paid. Well, it was my first paid thing. I got paid for little things down here. But that was when I got the contract in the mail. It was my flatmates. I was like, check this out, because it was, it was ridiculous. I mean, it was really good. 4 minutes was what they wanted from you.
Yeah.
And they were paying you $300 a minute. I said, how's that for an hourly rate? That's $18,000 an hour. So anyway, but they flew you up and they put you on, and we were so lucky. And the comedians nowadays don't have that. They have other means, but they don't have that. And I often think that would be quite good to get the comedians out there, seen. At the moment they have to pass through other programs now. So
what we don't seem to have is in New Zealand, and I know it sounds silly because there is a group called iHeartRadio who has 250,000 podcasts on their service. They talk about it in their advertising. Yeah. But what we don't have, because what you're talking about sounds like you hear American comedians talking about doing Johnny Carson or doing the late night shows, and they don't do them anymore.
No.
And one of the reasons they don't do morning radio anymore, because they can turn up to Tulsa, Oklahoma. Is that right? Tulsa, it feels right. And
sounds good. Yeah.
And they can use their social media to tell the people they're in town to sell it again. They don't need to go into Key Rock 105 in the morning. So they don't do breakfast radio and they don't do the night shows. They do a podcast and they have social media. Yeah. And they're all in control of it themselves.
It's exciting.
But what we don't really see is it again that necessarily so they're not doing those late night gigs. In New Zealand, what we're talking about with the pop comedy thing is kind of the equivalent of it, 4 minutes, which would be the late night thing. But we also don't yet have all these comedians then switching into the other mode. Yes, some of them have got social media presences, but I don't know. Is it just, and I'm not trying to say, America's got it all together in this world, but is it just because America's so big that they can do that? If you've got 330 million people, well, the numbers are going down every day thanks to COVID, but if you've got 330 million people pulling into Tulsa, Oklahoma, you're bound to have 1,000 people there that follow you. Yeah. So to fill out a 300-seater theatre is a piece of piss. It might just be the numbers, eh?
That's it. It is. Well, that's a large part of it, because if you get a small percentage showing up to your show, you make enough in order to be able to do this all around the place. The comedians that did the college circuit, for example, throughout the States, they just keep rotating. By the time they got to the end, they can start again at the beginning. It's like painting.
Just checking, Tulsa isn't Oklahoma.
It's good to love it, yeah. But it's like painting the Firth of Forth, the bridge over the Firth of Forth in Scotland. The guys that paint it, by the time they've painted the bridge, it's time to start again at the end. So you just keep going. So yes, in New Zealand, it's not that sustainable. However, the same principle applies there where it's getting to the point now where you're going to be... Well, it happened a while back with South Park. Remember when Trey Parker and Matt Stone, they put South Park on a teeny wee American channel, and it was so popular that everyone flocked to that channel.
Yeah.
Because that's the only place they could get it there. Well, a larger internet version of that has been happening ever since, which is where if you build it, they will come, and word will spread. And so it becomes it becomes purely public driven. Like what it's actually like is it's like being in a stand-up club. If you're the comedian on stage, there is nobody between you and the crowd telling the crowd that this is funny and that they should laugh. There's nobody. You get the feedback immediately.
Yeah.
If you suck, you know immediately that you suck, and you really hear it, and that's what drives the thing up there through the roof, drives the standard up. So take away the gaps between the people and the art, and they'll flock where they may.
And then people are now putting comedy into those gaps. I mean, we talked about Kyle Dunnigan, and I'll bring it up, but his Instagram account, he uses it so differently from everybody else. His Instagram account is just comedy. I mean, other comedians who you have Instagram accounts, and all of them do, there'll still be things in there with them and their dog, or even the
that's me.
Even
how dare you?
Even the much beloved photo of their meal.
Yeah.
The Joe Rogan putting out there the latest elk steak that he's cooking.
Yeah.
But
I've got very little comedy on mine. Mine's mostly dogs, but no food.
But Kyle Dunnigan, it's only comedy, so he's actually not even move the gap between the audience and him. He's now using that gap for his art as well, which is kind of cool. It's like finding new ways of doing this and new ways of using technology.
That's it, and that's what COVID has done in a strange way. Is it has forced it's forced people to think very, very laterally about what's going to happen from now on. And the fact that a lot of stuff and entertainment might go online and people can find their way to whatever works. People are starting to get really innovative. If you put people in a corner and you squeeze and you say, right, the heat's on, what are you going to do? A tremendous amount of lateral thinking can happen, and stuff's going to sprout out of this disaster that is COVID, that is going to mean the next few years creatively are going to be very interesting and probably go in a direction that didn't go before. And anything innovative and interesting like that, I'm all for. I'm not scared in the slightest. I'm absolutely about what's coming up next.
What about what's coming up next with you? I've found for me during COVID, I've got a bit of a kick on at the moment, that if people go to my Instagram, they'll see some things I'm saying and putting on there about I think that all of us, and I would say all of us because maybe it's not you, but many of us haven't actually come to terms with what a fucked up year this has been. And I don't just mean, for some people financially or for some people relationally, but actually for ourselves. So I've got a big thing going on at the moment, how we need to be kinder to ourselves and nicer to ourselves. And one of the things I'm doing is I put a little post up the other day that says, for one success you receive in 2020, it's worth 20 successes any other year.
That's exactly right.
Because it's been such a difficult year with so many things going on in the year about that. So one of the things that I've realised is I've got a couple of other business interests and some stuff I'm doing. I'm basically closing them all down. So they haven't worked during COVID, and COVID has been like the straw that broke their camel's back. So I'm going to move away from them. I'm going to close them all down. I just kind of turned away about 8 domain names the other day, and they're no longer going to be a part of my stable of things. And I'm going to go narrow. And I'm going to go deep on this stuff. So I've got a few more ideas for next year, but I'm going to push real hard. So it's not necessarily a new thing, but the focus has been podcast and digital content and some other bits and pieces we're thinking about for this. For the next 12 months, I'm going to push hard and I'm going to push narrow. To see what we can get out there. But what about you saying these things are exciting there? What have you come out of COVID for yourself kind of thinking and looking at and thinking about, say, the next 12, 24, 60 months?
Well, having just got married.
Congratulations. I saw that.
Thank you. I didn't mean to throw that in so casually. Having just got married. Now, Laura and I got married at the end of October, and it was meant for the end of March. And so that quickly
Bloody
came. Yes, we just missed out by like 5 days. But luckily, the people that were coming were able to sort of reconvene. But yeah, coming out of like getting married and then having this going, it's one of those moments there where you go, right, this wasn't quite the rosy carry-on that was happening before COVID, because we had great plans. And so the plans are still there, but now it's just how do we approach them. And I mean, half of my plans there you'll see them over the next 12 months, but there's wonderful stuff in place. And like I do animation, I do voices, and I'm playing around with different ideas, and we just got talking about things that people might want to see that they might not see on TV and stuff. There because you can throw anything up online now, you can start to put things out there, just little tasters, and see if people like them, and then you can do more. And like yourself here, I got a studio at home that I got set up before everything all caved in, and I'm doing a bit of drawing. Oh, cats, pets. Oh.
So you're talking about your animation. Let me just throw this up for people to see. Oh, yeah, it's not often you actually meet people. This is you, correct?
Yeah, that's real.
That's
real time. I'm drawing that real time. I've got extraordinary fast
I was
hands.
just going to double check, because we often see this kind of thing online.
That's my hair. See down the bottom. Yeah.
So this is another skill I didn't realize about you. You had, but it's like realist. When it comes, is this just pencil?
Yeah,
like an HB charcoal pencil or something.
We got a dog before. Yeah, this is actually that's a $2 shop pencil there, and it's a $2 shop pad.
So this is your artwork that you did on the 4th of this month.
Yeah, that's right.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's a beautiful Flame is the name of that cat.
Yeah.
And the reason was I drew Bonnie because we got Bonnie, our dog, just before COVID. Again, we were like, yay, got a house, and we're going to get married, and got a dog. And of course, when COVID kicked in, people were like, oh, you must be glad to be with the dog. And I was like, yep, except creatively.
Yeah.
So Laura was working as soon as working came back in after COVID there, and so I was with Bonnie. We're both raising Bonnie, but I would be left with Bonnie. So when keeping an eye on the dog and things around the house and stuff there, drawing was something that I just began to do. I could do voiceovers into my microphone at home, but of course there was no gatherings of people when we were going in and out of that time there. So the work was low. The audio and TV and radio work was low as well too, because they were working with what was given to them about what had been made, and so audio work was down a bit. Everything was down a bit. You begin to feel like you're going mad because you go, why is there nothing out there? And then you hear from other people, no, there's just nothing out there.
Yeah.
So I just drew, and I drew Bonnie, and then people started to say, well, can you draw my pet? So I drew him. Now I'm getting humans. So now I'm drawing all kinds of
is this turned into a little business?
Oh, I'm just drawing pictures for people and send them out, and it's fun. It's an exercise. Like, you've got to keep it going.
How long would that cat take you? That picture we just saw. What's that time frame?
That would be about 3 hours, I guess.
Wow.
Maybe 2, maybe 3.
Is it a cathartic thing as well?
Yeah, that's it, exactly.
Yeah.
As a creative, you've got to just keep going. That's why I do the stop motion animation too. Is you're squishing clay, or you're
Is there
doing
any of that on
pencil.
your Facebook page? Any of the stop motion?
Yeah. Oh, if you go to YouTube.
If I go to YouTube,
and then if you go to oh god, what would it be under? Put McKinney animation. Oh, we don't want to bore the people with this too much.
No, I want to see it. I don't give a crap what they want to see.
No, go Xmas. Go up the top and put Xmas afterwards.
Excellent. Yes.
Yeah. There, that's me at the top there. That's I did that back. I did that 13 years ago, so I need to upload more.
Do we need to bring the volume up?
Yeah, sure, if you like. I did all the voice.
My favorite part of Christmas. It's all good, man. Especially when I get to pull a sleigh, like towing it across the sky. You're flying, man. You're so high in the sky. You know what I'm saying?
So, what's your favorite part about Christmas?
Cheetah. No lips.
Yeah, that's right.
When we get shoes, I got little shoes. Look at that, tiny.
So,
What do I like about Christmas?
so I did all the voices.
Is it plasticine?
Yeah,
It
it's
looks like
Fimo.
plastic.
Yep.
Fimo.
So you can bake it. So the
Yeah.
middle of those are baked, and the loose bits are left unbaked. And so this, what I did was I was working for Studio 2 at the time, or for Saturday Disney.
So that was Squirt. That was the involvement with Squirt.
Oh, the Squirt was before that.
Right.
So Squirt was when I lived down here. I lived in Auckland for 12 years after I came back from Edinburgh, and I was a director. I was a writer, the writer for Saturday Disney, and they would let me direct out in the field a few times with Jermaine Leaf and
Cool.
Vicky Lynn, which was so much fun.
Yeah.
And they sort of put. Oh, just turn it up. This guy here. This is the voice.
The timing for getting together.
And eating lots of the wurst, which is the sausage.
Yeah, so that was just the German guy.
So what I said to them was, I said, if I made some animation, would you put it on the show? And they were like, yeah, sure. And but they sort of hamstrung me a bit because they said, if you put it on, we'd have to put it on tomorrow.
What?
And I went, oh no, I need some time to animate this there. And they went, well, sorry, dude, that's the way it is there. I think there might have been a wee bit of, well, he'll never get it done by then. So
Yeah.
So I wrote, at the end of the day, I went up to John, who was the cameraman. John Drew is a very, very good cameraman, exceptional. Him and Lance Wordsworth were chosen by Ian Taylor to work at Studio 2 and Saturday Disney. We shared them both.
Wow, cool.
Lance got taken on board the Earth Race boat. But
Yeah.
it's a
Oh,
slightly
wow.
camera. Ian Taylor had the knack of choosing people just like this, highly talented people. So John and Lance, amazing. John was on his way home, and I said, John, can I borrow you for 5 minutes? I'll tell you why. I can't be bothered putting traffic noise in the back, so I'm going to take you out to the street, and you're going to ask me these questions, and I'm going to answer them 5 different ways as 5 different nationalities and characters. And he was like, okay, fine. I said, I need you to film me, but don't worry about the camera, just the microphone. I just need a crystal clear, and your camera's recorded very clearly. I took home the audio, cut it together into this, so here's where you hear traffic noise, ambient, Raconteur. And I made the characters, made the wall, hung that's plastic in the background there, lit the thing, and shot it. It took me 13 hours to animate 2 minutes of stuff there, which is 24 frames a second, but I was doing 2 shots per frame, so 12 movements per second. And after I had no sleep, and in the morning he came to the door, and I had that, when you've been up all night and you get that olive oil sheen all over your face there, and I just gave him the finished thing and went there, and he went, dude, oh my God, you look real. And I was like, yeah, and it went to air, and they put it on. So yeah, it's 13 hours straight animating, got 2 minutes of stuff there. But yeah, and I've done other ads and stuff as well too. But it's so much fun because you push, and it's those little movements, those little sideways eye flickers and stuff, that double takes and things are so much fun.
And so is this something? I mean, I always think about side hustles,
Yeah.
and income streams, and that kind of stuff. It sounds like you've done a lot, and you've got a lot of skills there for doing other things. But is this something you still would do now? Do now?
Very much.
Yeah.
This
When was the last animation you made?
well, it would have been for. I've taken part in a lot of CG stuff, but that's only as acting. Actually, physically animating, probably about 10 years ago.
All right.
Yeah. But I've talked about music videos and everything since then, and that was the idea. Was during COVID, everyone went, "Oh, I'll learn Spanish or I'll do this," and I was meant to do such a wonderfully epic whatever, but of course, dog and planning and life and stuff. So yeah. But yeah, no, there's so many things. It's fun if you're everybody wants to create their own story, their own world, their own. Because as a comedian, you're bringing people into your world as well too, and even as an MC, when you're doing your corporate thing and you're in the suit on stage and you're helping out somebody else's conference, or 3 days in Australia, or helping out somebody's award ceremony, they want you to take them to another world every now and then.
Yeah.
They want you to.
It's part of the storytelling.
Yeah, you've done what they can't do. They're working hard. You've been playing in your own head, and you've created this little dream world, and they don't mind being taken to it if you take them there the right way. I've entertained builders and plumbers and mechanics and that kind of thing, hard-working guys there, and taken them by the hand, led them down a path to such a bizarre finishing point that you see them afterwards, and other comics do this all the time. They'll be clapping and turning to their mates and laughing. There was clashing, and then you can see them going, "What the hell were we just like? How did he get us laughing at that?" One of the best things I ever saw was an old farmer had been brought along to a corporate night by his wife. He'd clearly been tugged along. He's one of those farming guys who belonged. You could tell he wanted to get back. He had things to do back on the farm. And this was at the Classic, and the corporate night was there. And he's one of these guys. He's more comfortable in the field. One of those. How farmers always look like they've been stuffed into their suit. Nothing quite fits.
It's kind of like a barrel.
Yeah,
just a barrel shape.
But everything's a bit misshapen. He doesn't belong, and it's not comfortable. Like children want to get out of whatever top they're on. He loved her, and she was happy that he was right there, and she was talking to everyone. And then the comedy came on, and he was having a miserable time because he had other things on his mind. But I was looking at him, because you sit up the top. If you're a comedian, you can sit up and watch the show, and then I love to watch the reactions of people. I enjoy being at events, rock concerts and stuff, even if just to see the crowd around. I'll enjoy what's going on, but this is epic. Watching how people enjoy things is really good. And I watched him, and I thought, oh, you poor guy, you love her so much and you're here for her and it's great, but you're having a miserable time. He had his beer in front of him and you could tell he was hanging on to that just for grim death. But I knew the comedian's bit on stage. I knew what was coming up and I thought, I knew what joke he was going to tell in a bit, and I thought, I think that he might like what I know is coming. So I waited and watched, and the joke happened and it hit him. And he didn't know what had hit him. And here's what he did. He was sitting there, grumpy kind of thing, and waiting for it all to finish. And he suddenly went, ha! And laughed out of the blue. Sorry about your microphone there. And he laughed. It came out of nowhere. He laughed against his will. Now, when you tell a joke that's funny enough that somebody laughs, he was like a dog that had farted itself awake. You know, the way they're upset, and he didn't know where to come from. And he wanted more. So he immediately locked on, and he realized that he could get a feed of dopamine from this. But that was really something to me, was to see somebody, laugh against their will. It was. Yeah.
Do you know? You don't know, but I'll tell you something.
Yeah.
And talk about going full circle, because we're professionals and stuff. I did that during that LOL program.
You laughed out loud. Cool.
There was a moment where I didn't realize the laugh was coming.
Yeah.
And it exploded out of me.
Yeah.
There was just a particular moment.
Yep.
Yeah.
Laura was watching Joe Rogan last night, the Netflix thing.
Yep.
And that happened to me too. I burst out laughing at something he said that was just so outrageous, and it surprised me. And you're delighted too, because you're like, oh, I'm capable of making a really weird noise very loudly.
I've actually found that as I've gotten older, I find it easier to laugh. Like some of the things, I have the ability, probably because of head trauma, to watch things multiple times. Like if I watch...
Oh, but I do that. Yep.
If I watch something 5 years ago, I can watch it now and I'll have forgotten 40% of it.
Yeah.
And I can watch it again and enjoy it, sort of thing. So I'm a huge fan of South Park.
Yep.
And I watch some of those episodes now and I find them to be funnier. And I find myself, whether I'm by myself with my kids, whatever, laughing out loud like I would never do previously at things that I would have found really funny, but wouldn't have laughed out loud. I don't know whether, as you get older, things start to loosen up. I don't know if the sense of humour is one of those things, but other things certainly do. And I reckon I'm the strange juxtaposition that in such a tough year for so many people, and I don't want to put myself out there as a victim because there's many have had it worse than me, but we all live our own reality. And for me personally, personal life and marriage and all that kind of stuff were a tough 3 or 4 years. I'm finding it easier to laugh today than I ever have. I'm not sure, and I'm not sure, I've never said this out loud. I've thought it, but I've never said this out loud, and I'm not sure why. So I find it easier to laugh today than I ever have.
Well, that's good news, and I'm glad you said it out loud. Yeah. I'm glad you said it to me. I feel flattered. Thank you very much.
Well, this is what happens in this podcast. We just start talking, and things come up.
Well, what about, like, COVID is like a mini depression. Like, how they said during the Great Depression, the two things that didn't stop selling were comedy, as an entertainment, so films as well too.
I guess beer, was it?
And beer.
Yeah.
Yep. It was alcohol, and people wanted to drink and they still wanted to laugh. And I think COVID is a form of that kind of thing going on there, where people have gone, let's laugh, and let's laugh at things that are really a bit wrong or catch us off guard. What's happened at the same time as COVID, interestingly, is there has been this a bit of cancel culture and a bit of being socially aware, which is fantastic. All the good sides that come with that are great, where people are being treated more fairly. The casualty to that has been there has been less audacity in humour, and there has been less risk taking in humour, because people have been are nervous about that there. So right when people needed something wicked to laugh at, and not mean, not offensive, not the slash, it's not slighting anybody, but I think there perhaps might have been a bit of a that's why we laugh at stuff that was made a while ago, like South Park, like you say, is the audacity. You're like, oh my God, how could they do that? And how could they do it so freely? Like, so much seems to be, this sounds so bad. It sounds like we're talking about the good old days. There's plenty of good comedy being made now, but I know what you mean about the South Park thing. Where
but actually, no. But the South Park thing has got. I mean, I'm a little bit addicted to Matt and Trey. There, if I see an interview or I read everything and I watch everything, because I said this just yesterday, and I hate repeating myself so much on the podcast, but I love the creative process.
Yeah.
And so their 6 Days to Air documentary, everyone should see.
Oh, yeah,
who likes
yeah.
creating things. It's just an absolute benchmark for the creative process. But they say themselves that today it's the opposite. What they do today, they never could have done in Series 1. They refer to it as Series 1 was like they call it Yo Gabba Gabba, which is basically a kids show in America that's like, oh, everything's happy and fair and
Oh, I see.
and
They
so
went the other way.
they actually
Yeah.
think now they do stuff. I mean, probably since the bleeding Virgin Mary and that kind of stuff, it's gone on and on and on and on and on. And Mr. Oh, what's his name?
Mr.
The
Hankey.
teacher. No, the
Mr.
teacher. Mr. Garrison.
Yeah,
When Mr. Garrison was Miss Garrison, and there was a scissoring scene, they have got more and more and more and more and more down
Yeah.
that path. But
then they
but they've also always been the ones that haven't abided by the
That's
rules.
what I'm saying. They're hardly going to be the ones that toe the line.
But
are
I
they?
also think that the thing that perhaps we're missing, and the thing that's to be concerning about, I don't know if it's that we're missing that over the edge comedy and stuff now, but what we're missing is the young comics doing it, because the DC, he who shall not be named because I've mentioned his name too many times in this thing, and the Joe Rogans and the Tom Seguras and the Ari Shafirs and these guys who are already at the
Old.
top of their game,
Yeah.
they're like, I don't get, Joe Rogan signs $100 million deal.
Spotify, yeah.
He doesn't give a fuck if he gets cancelled. In fact, he's the one that kind of is the trend of who gets cancelled.
Yeah.
Not that he's actively doing it.
Yeah.
He doesn't care, but the 22-year-old in some club in Auckland or in Sydney or in New York,
Yeah.
they have to be careful if they say the wrong thing that they don't then get picked up by Saturday Night Live.
so sad.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
it
I
is.
wonder,
Yeah.
I wonder, and I don't know, but I wonder if what you're seeing is more coming from the next layer who won't push those boundaries, because the guys who, Dave got a $60 million deal for 3 specials and he had 2 of them filmed already. He tells of the story and he goes, here's 2. He literally just handed them over.
Yeah, that's
Rogan gets a $100 million deal for Spotify.
Yeah.
These guys aren't worried about being cancelled so much. They don't.
No.
That doesn't matter. But if you're still living in a shoebox apartment in South Auckland or in Tribeca or in down by the docks in Sydney, there's more to it being concerned about not being able to go up through the process to get to that check in 15 years time, perhaps.
Yeah, I think you could be right. I think it would be a shame if you meant well and got shot down early on. I see what you mean. If you went to a club and got booed out of it because or thrown out, and your name besmirched, sort of like, oh, we can't have them here, and you were like, I was just finding my feet, I was doing this. I mean,
you've never seen Jimmy Carr take a backward step, in the last 10 years since he's been at the top of his game.
Yeah.
But Jimmy Carr, whoever that is, who's currently 19, starting in the clubs in London, who wants to be there next week, who wants to then get the job on Radio 1 or whatever, might take a different approach and might not turn into the Jimmy Carr that there was today.
On the other hand, I think I know. Yeah, I agree with what you're saying there. On the other hand, if you play it too safe, then you become insipid and you merge into the background and you become sort of beige. And
I think that's the problem. I think that what we're doing in society a lot at the moment, forget comedy, life, is we're looking to paint people beige.
Yep.
The way that we can go, everyone's the same, no one's different. And I'm not going to be one of those boomers, because I'm not a boomer. I'm a Gen X. Tell my children that. I told my 14-year-old, she goes, Daddy, you're a boomer. I said, no, I'm a Gen X. You know what she fucking said, my 14-year-old? Oh, that's such a boomer thing to say. Such a little cow.
Oh, the irony.
She's quick, man, that one. She's quick.
You and I are both Gen X. This is great.
I know.
Yeah,
But that's what she said to me. She said, it's such a boomer thing to say. And I forgot what I was going to say.
We're painting things to be beige. I'll tell you.
Okay, you jump in.
No, sorry. No, you finished.
Yeah,
what
I'm
you
just
were
trying to
gonna
remember
say.
what I was going to say.
Yeah. In society, you felt that was the way things were going there as well, too. Like,
I don't want to quite say things were better in the past and that kind of stuff.
No.
That's not what I'm at.
no, there's a bright future, but I hear where you're coming from.
I think that I heard someone talking the other day. Actually, no, I'm not going to talk about that because I don't know if it's true or not. I don't like putting out information. I'll happily say I've heard someone say I don't know if it's true and putting stuff out there. But if I'm still wanting to work on it and figure out if it is true, I won't.
Right.
Typically, I'll tell you afterwards.
Yep.
Remind me, and I'll tell you afterwards. But I think the idea of us all being the same, and this is what I was going to say. I'm not one of those people that kind of goes, you should never have partition medals at a primary school. But actually, it feels like on some level at the moment, we're now getting those participation medals in adulthood. you know, and we don't want, and it's the tall poppy syndrome to the max at the moment.
Yep.
And that kid, that 19-year-old who's unbelievably offensive within the context of comedy, or you know, maybe they're a writer, and maybe that's another, you know, that's another artistic endeavor where they're pushing boundaries and trying things. I just hope that there's at least someone around them, someone they can look to, whether they know them or not, whether it's a famous writer or comedian or actor offshore, whether it's someone in their circle, that they can go, I'm gonna stay the path. This is me. This is my artistic output. This is how I want to do it. I'm going to stay the path, because those are the guys that'll be the next Dave Chappelle's or Joe Rogan's or Jimmy Carr's or whoever it is.
You've just nailed it. And in the comedy industry in New Zealand, actually, Brendan Lovegrove is a colleague of mine, and he is particularly good at helping the young comics come up through the ranks there. He's the one. Brendan is such a fan of comedy that he will actually mentor them, but just with a gentle word or two afterwards, or suggestion here and suggestion there. And you'll never find out from him that he did it. You'll find out from them. They'll say, gee, it was great the way he took me aside and just said, no, maybe try this, maybe do that. Because Brendan wants to see things work. You'll get other comics who might want to be seen to be helping young comics, but they're not really. Not hardly any of those, but Brendan's one of these. He wants it to flourish, and so he's the one who will say, because he knows the difference between purely offensive and good. Because there's a difference, you know. You can't just go wild and crazy and then go, I'm random, so accept me, I'm different. Or you can't go, you're dismissing me because I'm different when you're only random. You have to be funny too. But Brendan's really good at spotting the funny. And, you know, if it's the whole package, great, bring it on. And you got to nurture that, because it's like in school. Like when I was at school there, you had to find your strengths. I wasn't very strong, never have been. I mean, strong legs, but that's about it. But you find your strengths. What's going to get me through school? And mine was my voices. If a bully was going to sort of get me, if I pulled out a teacher's voice or did some kind of impersonation or mimicked something, that could often prevent you from getting, you know. So you become like superheroes. What's your thing?
What's your power?
Human Torch, the Hulk, you know. And so voices, and in taking risks and coming through the comedy industry as well too. If every comedian can find their thing that puts them out from the crowd, then you don't blend. You don't need to have a superpower, but if you do, then it helps. I did silly voices, and so that helped me.
Yeah.
But if you blend, because if you blend, then you are safe, but then you're inherently unfulfilled. And I want all of the comics in New Zealand coming up through the ranks to be as random as possible, because that's where it's going to work. All you have to do is be you, and then learn how to be you funny as well too. Because everyone loves uniqueness, but if you can blend that with high quality humor, you've got something that nobody else can copy too.
It's one of those lessons that I got taught early on in radio. It's like the best radio announcers are themselves, but they're themselves on a cup of coffee. They're just 5% elevated, but they're not putting on a show. They're still themselves.
Yeah, with professional benefits in there as well too. Yeah. So they know the ropes.
Friends with benefits, maybe. Yeah. So I was just going to say, and I think it's probably time for us to wrap up this little TARDIS of a thing that we do where the time flies by.
Yeah.
But you live in Dunedin, we can do this again next week.
I will be here half the time in Dunedin and half the time up north. That's right. We might have bought a house here, but we spend half the time up north.
Nice.
So great, yeah.
You talking about, you know, doing comedy, young people on stage. I just was reminded then, and you said something again now, which reminded me again. I trained to be a primary school teacher, and amongst that training, one of the things they did was they taught us about, you know, they teach kids, we are the kids being taught at university, how to teach kids. And I can remember distinctly being taught in a PE lesson about teaching kids how to play tennis. And so they had a tennis coach there who was a, you know, professional who was teaching all these students how to teach primary school kids how to play tennis. And I remember distinctly him saying, don't worry about the outlines. All you try and do with a kid when they're starting to play tennis is make really good contact with the ball. If they can make really good contact with the ball and it hits the fence at the back and goes out by 10 meters, that's a win.
Yeah, nice.
Because it's the skill they gain as they go on which will get them to control that power. But all you're trying to do with a kid when they're yay big is good contact with the ball That's it. I think about that a lot.
It's a good one. I like that a lot.
When it comes to life.
Yeah.
Because so often I think whatever it is, be it a young person doing comedy, be it starting a new job, be it trying a new whatever, we try and hit the ball as hard as we can and perfectly onto the line on day one. Whereas the metaphor that, well, it's not a metaphor what he did, but the metaphor I take from it is make good contact with the ball, solid contact, so it flies well.
Yeah.
We'll worry about getting it in the months to come.
That's perfect. I really like that. I enjoy that. And that also to me is like the old kind of, if you feel like you don't want to try something because you might fail, and in this day and age your failure can be shown up on social media and everywhere more than perhaps you could fail sort of in private when you were young, ages ago. And so now people are scared of failing. Well, don't be afraid to fail. It sounds like such a cliche, but it is so true, and that's a good one there. Hit it with all you've got going on. If you're feeling a bit low as well too, and like you can't be bothered, sometimes you can't be bothered getting off the couch. I know at times I felt like that too. It's amazing what a walk around the block will do. Just change your location. People go, yeah, I'll still feel the same. Well, you might, yeah. Or something could happen further down the road. You bounce into it, good contact, and to heck with where the ball lands. I love that. It's really cool.
Yeah, because once the skill starts to improve, that's when you start to control the ball.
Yeah.
But if you can, because you don't want to hit the ball and have it bounce off the frame or whatever of the racket.
Yeah.
Hit it in the middle, nice sweet. When you hit a golf ball and you hear that real, that proper, when you hit it proper. Like I played a lot of golf in my 20s, and when you hit it well, you're like, fucking A. I don't care where that goes, it sounded. That's why driving ranges are so good, because you sound amazing. Now, the ball might shoot off to the left, but if it sounds amazing,
wouldn't that be great to have a golfer say that to people, say, oh, look where you put it doesn't matter. Did you hear that? I'll play it back. That was awesome. That was really good.
Hey, Simon McKinney, it's been an absolute blast.
Yeah.
And even though you've said of your website it's out of date, if people want to find out more about you, where's the best place for them to find you if they want to come say and see your stuff? See your drawings of cats.
Yeah, Facebook is good. Facebook / Simon McKinney will get you to a place where we can where they can see stuff, and if they look at stuff on YouTube, it's fun as well too. But stay tuned, because I'm gonna get. I think everyone's in a creative frame of mind, and I know COVID's been bad, but I can't wait to see what happens artistically over the next year with everyone.
Totally, I'm feeling you.
Yeah.
Well, we've been talking about this for who knows 6 months to a year.
Yeah,
we've finally done it.
I'm just glad to be in the same town and be able to sit across the desk from you.
I hope you've enjoyed yourself while we've been in here. And dude, thanks for coming in.
Cheers, man. Thanks.